Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode. I'm really excited today because I get to talk with a fellow Midwesterner, a physician who is a child and adolescent psychiatrist and has an active YouTube, Instagram, all the things, all the places that I like to hang out. She hangs out as well and talks about child psychiatric issues, psychological issues that affect children. This is Dr. Aly Wood, and I would love, Dr. Wood, if you could kind of just start and tell us a little bit about you, where you're from, where you practice, what, your family and everything like that.
Absolutely. So originally from Illinois, however, across the years with medical school, residency, all that good stuff, we landed in Iowa City.
Okay.
So I'm married. My husband is also a physician. He's a family medicine doc. We have a 1.5-year-old. So yeah, right now our roots are in Iowa City. And I am practicing in private practice at Psychiatric Associates. And then I also do a little work at the university as well.
And how long have you been there? You said just a year and a half.
hmm So
Awesome. And
in practice, but ultimately like 5 years in Iowa City though. So it's kind of turning into home.
that's so cool. I love when I was in medical school, I interviewed in Iowa City for pediatrics residency and loved that. And we had strongly considered moving there. It's much like, so you're in Iowa City and we're in Lincoln, which are, both college towns and have a very similar vibe to them. Where in Illinois did you grow up?
So I grew up in Hampshire, which is a small town. It's about an hour and a half away from Chicago area.
Okay.
So yeah, so small town feel, kind of being in Iowa City it's easy.
I feel like everybody prefaces everything with the relationship to Chicago, like it's
Yeah.
this
Oh,
far away
absolutely.
from Chicago.
It's a landmark that everyone knows, right?
Yes. Well, I mean, you started your practice and then the pandemic hit. And I mean, there has been a lot of mental health talk, which I think has been great that people are more willing to talk about it of late. But there's a lot of mental health issues that are facing young children to teenagers to adults and beyond. In this moment. And one thing that you and I were talking about before we started rolling is about the big emotions. And I will tell you, we have 5 kids. We have a lot of big emotions at our house. And it varies by kid and time of day and time of, time between the last meal and all the different things that add up. Even like, we can be like, okay, today it must be Friday because our emotions are quite heightened compared to where they are on Monday or something like that. But big emotions are common. And when I was growing up, and I think when our parents were growing up, it was you hold it together, pipe down, you're fine. Those are the things that defined a lot of people's childhood and parenting. And I had good parents, and I feel like I was able to express my emotions without being shut down and told, don't do this or don't say that or don't do or think what you're feeling. But I think there's a lot of parents out there that could use a little bit of help on how to deal with big emotions because most people weren't trained for that. And most people have these children and they become 2-year-olds and like, wow, these are some bigger emotions than I was expecting. And 3-year-olds and 4-year-olds is just a little bit more challenging. So can you tell us kind of what you see or what you talk with parents about when it comes to big emotions, and then how you kind of frame helping parents to move through the big emotions?
Absolutely. So my go-to is always going back to a DBT framework, which is short for dialectical behavior therapy.
Okay.
And the reason I like this, it was created in the 1980s by Marsha Linehan, and it really was initially established to target adults who have significant difficulties regulating emotions and their behaviors, because
Okay.
with big emotions usually comes big behaviors as well, right? And this, around a decade later, in the 1990s, started to be used with teens and their families. And we have seen great results and
Okay.
success.
Okay.
So the target of DBT, right, is to replace problem behaviors with more skillful behaviors, right? It helps people experience a range of emotions without necessarily needing to act on those emotions. And then on top of just behaviors, emotions, it always helps people as well in just basic relationships, whether it's with family, those at work or school, with peers. And the overarching goal of DBT is to help people live a life worth living.
Okay.
So a lot of the times I go back to the DBT framework, and I do have a skill that I absolutely love for those big, intense, explosive behaviors, and it's the tip skill. So real quick though, I just wanted to kind of touch on the way I explain behaviors to parents, right? The example I typically use is children going into Hulk mode, as in the character,
Mm,
the Incredible Hulk, right?
right, right.
And when your child goes into extreme emotional arousal, that's my definition of Hulk mode. And, some people will describe this as their kids seeing red or entering the red zone, right? But for
Sure.
kids, I find that sometimes confusing for them, right? They do better when we use more concrete examples. And I feel like the Incredible Hulk is a character that they're already familiar with.
Sure.
So, kind of looking at Hulk mode, what do we typically see? So, like the Hulk, right? They're more likely to be quick to react, which in turn leads to them feeling those big emotions, whether it's
Mm-hmm.
panic, frustration, anger, fear. And then on top of the emotions, our body starts to react and to respond. So you might see that your child has increased heart rate. They might get shaky or sweaty, have that pulsating feeling in their hands or in their toes, maybe some headaches or complaints of stomach aches. And then oftentimes with that, it changes the thought process, right? This can lead to racing thoughts and an inability for them to think more clearly. So typically what I see in combination, right, the big emotions, the physical body sensations, the racing thoughts, that often leads to big, explosive, destructive behaviors for some
Totally.
children.
Totally.
Yeah, and that could look differently for every kid, right? It might be yelling, screaming, cursing. It could be throwing objects, destroying property, or even like physical aggression, hitting, kicking, biting, spitting. I mean, really, they basically lose complete control.
Yes. I mean, I'm just cycling through all the, mental images of moments.
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah,
there's a couple kids
exactly.
in our family in particular that, make the highlight reel more often than the others, I will say. But okay, so they lose control.
Hmm.
They're essentially out of control. You can't expect them to know even what they're doing, or I mean,
Exactly.
where do you go from here when you see that? Please keep going. Sorry, I interrupted.
Yeah, no, you're totally fine. You're totally fine. So ultimately, the way I also explain the kind of the Hulk mode example to parents is once they turn green and they're going into Hulk mode, they almost get to the point of no return, right? You
Right.
find that those typical coping mechanisms aren't as effective as they usually are. So whether it's coloring, watching TV, playing games, listening to music, showering, the ones that most people are commonly know. So those don't typically work. And the way I kind of think of it is like a speedometer, right? It goes from 0 to 100. And those traditional skills might be helpful for when we're in that 0 to maybe 75 range.
Okay.
And once we get to that 75 to 100, we're turning green, we're going into that Hulk mode. Those typical skills don't often work very well. And
Totally.
like you were mentioning, right? A lot of the times after these big blowups, these big explosive behaviors, the child might talk about not remembering what they said or did. And
Mm-hmm.
sometimes parents will ask me, like, hey, is this like manipulation? Are they trying to get out of
Mm-hmm.
trouble? And I'm like, absolutely not. It's completely truthful. I mean, really, everything that happens can be a blur to them because they're so dysregulated.
I think that I love that analogy of the car and the speedometer and everything, because you think of like when they're at 30 or 40, when you're driving at 30 or 40 and you need to make a course correction. It's not very difficult. If you are going under the shoulder, you can just easily pull back in. But when you're going 85, 90 miles per hour and you're headed off the shoulder, it's really difficult to course correct at that point, and you almost just have to like lean into the fact that, okay, I'm going off the road and how can I do this safely? So I that analogy really stuck with me.
Absolutely. And a lot of parents just find when we're getting to that point, they just basically have to weather the storm out, right? It's very hard to engage your child and redirect them at that time. Absolutely. So what I want to do is introduce a skill for, when our child is starting to turn green and go into that Hulk mode, right? And one of my favorite skills to use in DBT and to teach to families is called the TIP skill. It's TIPP.
Okay.
And this is considered a crisis survival distress tolerance skill, right? That's used to manage those extreme emotions. And the time to use this is when your child is becoming emotionally dysregulated and incapable of using those traditional skills, right? The ones that we were talking
Okay.
about, the TV, the reading, the coloring, whatever it is that they typically calm themselves with. And, we use these when their emotions are very high, when they're emotionally overwhelmed, when their brain's not processing information correctly. So ultimately, the goal is to reduce the intensity of your child's emotions, typically very quickly.
Okay.
And these skills are a little different in that the lasting effect might not be hours long, right? The goal is to get them to a more receptive state of mind where you can then start introducing those traditional skills that typically work. So a lot of the times the effects of the tip skills last maybe up to 20 minutes, depending on the child.
So you're really helping them to just slow things down, not necessarily completely come to a stop, but return to a normal speed so that then we can get back on track. Is that what I'm hearing?
Absolutely. So we're
Okay.
taking them out of that like 75 to 100 range and hopefully getting them maybe to that 30 to 50 range where we can
Okay.
introduce those other normal traditional coping mechanisms.
Okay.
Absolutely.
So how do we do it?
Yeah. So real quick though, I mean, just kind of basically looking at how these skills work and the body chemistry, reducing emotional, like extreme emotions quickly. We have that sympathetic nervous system, right? That overdrive. When we're feeling threatened, fearful or stressed, right? We're always on high alert and the body's preparing us for action. So we want to try to jumpstart that parasympathetic nervous system and really help rest and slow down that system. So let's dive into it if you're ready.
I'm ready. Let's hear it.
Awesome.
I'm just like
So
thinking about how I can use this at home tonight.
absolutely. So like I said, the skill's called the TIP skill, TIPP, and each letter stands for a different skill that we can use with our child. Okay.
Okay.
And the first one is temperature. And it's my personal favorite because I think it's kind of fun and kids enjoy doing it, right? And so ice water is known for being able to rapidly decrease your heart rate. Okay.
Okay.
So
Mhm.
it activates that dive reflex, which, us humans, other mammals have it. We immerse ourselves into very cold water without oxygen, and it basically causes the heart to slow down below the resting heart rate. Okay. So the
Totally. So I have
traditional,
to,
yeah,
as a pediatrician, on the
absolutely.
like medical side of things, we actually use this infrequently. It's more of like a historical or tidbit information thing. But you got a baby that's in SVT, supraventricular tachycardia, where their heart rate is 200, 250, something like that. You can use cool water, ice pack on them, and it will help do exactly as you described. It initiates that diving reflex. It tries to conserve resources by slowing the heart rate down. So that makes sense and resonates with me, that that's a way that you could help activate that parasympathetic system to bring things back down.
Absolutely. I love that example. Love it, love it. So the traditional way we teach this in DBT is actually to get a big bucket, typically like a popcorn bowl, right? Fill it with ice, fill it with water. And what you're going to do is you're going to have your child hold their breath, put their face in the bowl, typically up to the levels of the temples, and hold it there, right? We're going to submerge the child's head. Really around 10 to 30 seconds is the goal, but obviously that can be a little different based on, how long your child can hold their breath.
Right.
And you want to do this a couple times, right? Typically we do it around 2, 3 times. We just kind of submerge, pull them out, and then we submerge again and kind of repeat that process.
Okay. I think I can talk my 9-year-old into doing that, probably. I mean, I think he would enjoy the theatrics of
Exactly.
it.
It's a little extreme sometimes. There's some more subtle ways and, different things we could try. I do have a child right now that I'm seeing in clinic who at school, when she becomes nervous, will go to the bathroom and just splash cold water on her face.
Sure.
Other things, freezer packs, frozen peas, corn on the cheekbones, back of the neck is typically helpful. Cold showers. Another kind of extreme one would be like the ice bucket challenge. We're really trying to just shock that system.
Yes, I could see that. Although, as a parent, that would just create such a mess for me that I would be reluctant to do that unless it was a hot summer day and I could send them outside with the bucket,
Yeah,
because otherwise that's just going to create a lot of paper towel need in our house.
absolutely. That's the beauty of this, right? We could pick which skill works for us in the
Yeah.
moment.
Okay, so
So jumping
temperature is
out of
the
the
T.
T. Yep,
Yeah.
exactly. So next is the I, and that stands for intense exercise. And the way I look at this is that, when we have intense emotions, right, it prepares the body for action. Anger prepares us to attack. Fear prepares us to run. So when we're highly aroused, right, these skills allow us to act, to regulate the body instead of acting like impulsively on our emotional urges.
Okay.
So, I mean, ultimately the goal again is to calm down your body when it's revved up by that emotion. And the way
Mm-hmm.
that we have children engage in this is basically doing any form of high intensity exercise for a 10 to 20 minute period. Again, length of time can be more or less based on, what works for your child. But
Right.
again, the goal is to just get rid of those negative emotions and rapidly increase those positive emotions. So there's a lot of different forms, obviously, that intense exercise can take, whether it's
Okay.
running, jumping rope, dancing, if you're at your home, like running up and down flights of stairs, jumping
We do
jacks,
that.
push-ups. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Anything that
Stairs is the
allows them
easy
to go up
one.
that stream. Mm-hmm.
Right. Right. Stairs is the easy one. Although then everybody starts doing it, and then somebody inevitably pushes somebody else because they're trying to be the first.
Well,
We
it
need more
becomes a
staircases.
competition, right?
Yeah, exactly. And then soon people are pretending to fall down the stairs. But yes, stairs, intense exercise does work well at our house too.
Love it, love it, love it. So moving on to the P, the first letter
Okay.
P stands for paced breathing.
Okay.
And the beautiful thing about this skill, right, is that it can be done anywhere because we always have our breath with us.
Yes.
And, when doing this, we want to slow the breath way down, right? And breathe deeply from our stomachs, those big belly breaths. And so with
Okay.
little kids, they do better with visuals. So what I typically have them do is lie down and either put a pillow or a stuffed animal on their belly, right?
Okay.
So when they inhale, you can see it actually rise up. And when they exhale, it goes down. And so what I typically tell parents to do is to tell their child to breathe in for 4 seconds and then breathe out for 6. And the
Okay.
thought behind this is that the inhale usually causes a slight increase in heart rate while the exhale causes it to decrease. So we really want that exhale to be longer than the inhale.
Okay.
And
How do
then
you
typically,
find how do you find success when they're really hot and you're just telling them to breathe? Is it more helpful to model it for them or use physical touch to kind of like hold them and help them to breathe? I mean, what have you found works best for like helping a child? Because we'll often say this, but oftentimes they just huff and puff then. And it's like,
mhm,
well, no, don't breathe like that. Breathe like this. And then they just get more mad that we're like, telling them what to do as their
absolutely. And
parents.
I really think all of your suggestions, it's really dependent on the child, right? Some
Sure.
kids do
Totally.
better when they're kind of left alone to do their own thing and you're just there, your presence is supporting them.
Right.
Others really do well if you're kind of laying with them and taking those big breaths. Or like you said, even physical touch, just kind of maybe patting their head, rubbing their back, those kind of activities can be really helpful and soothing for kids.
Awesome. So paced breathing.
Yep. And then the last one is progressive muscle relaxation. And the goal with this is we want to feel tension and relaxation across all of our muscle groups. So typically, I kind of instruct children to go from head to toe. And the first place I start is the eyes and forehead. So shutting the eyes really tight, squeezing the brows together. What we do is we have them hold that tension for 10 seconds and then release for another 10 seconds. And the
Okay.
goal is to just notice the difference between the tension and the relaxation, right? So again, head to toe, typically start with the forehead, the eyes, move down to the nose, the cheeks, the mouth, neck and shoulders, maybe back and shoulder blades, arms, hands, abdomen, butt, thighs, calves, ankles, feet, right? We really can go head to toe and be really mindful of that sensation that we're feeling.
So instead of just telling them relax, or you're basically having them unrelax, meaning like tense themselves up really tight and then relax so that they can feel the difference between the two. Is that right?
Absolutely, because telling a kid just to relax, they have no clue what that means from
Right.
a either mentally in regards to the thought process behind it or even the physical sensation. Because when they're so emotionally regulated, right, our thought process just isn't clear at all. So
Right.
yeah, this is awesome because you really feel that tension and then that relaxation, and being able to notice that difference can help deregulate them at times.
Okay. Very cool. So temperature, intense exercise, pace breathing, progressive muscle relaxation. I can't believe I remembered all those.
It was, yeah, you did it great. It was beautiful. That's the beauty of this though, right? It's pretty simple to think about and to remember on the spot, whether it's the parent or the child. The big thing I do talk to parents about too is practice, 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 because thinking of it on the spot can be difficult at times. And then not only thinking of it, but then knowing how to do it. So, when we're in a state where we're not emotionally dysregulated, let's teach the children, the skills that they can use. And then when it comes time for them to need to use them, they already know the basic fundamentals of how to do it.
Awesome. I love that. I think those are such good, and it's a variety too. Like it's good approaches, but then there's a variety too, so that you can customize it for the situation, because you might be out at Walmart and not having access to water to dunk your head in, or it just is a little socially unacceptable to, fill a bucket of water and have your kid putting their head in the bucket at Walmart. um, but that's why you have a variety. So when you're at home, you can use these. When you're in specific situations or at specific times of day, there's a variety of different things that you can do. The the last two in particular, you don't have to have any other equipment or space to do them, because paced breathing is just with your breath, and progressive muscle relaxation is just right where you are, that you practice that. I love that. And I think practicing too, from what you said, that's something that you can do when they're not in those big emotion moments, so that you can get good at that. And then when you see them turning towards the Hulk, you can say, hey, why don't you try squeezing your eyebrows and eyes really tight, and then relaxing them, and see how that feels. Is that kind of how you would lead somebody through that?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay.
And like I said, just kind of do the hold for a good 10 seconds and then just try to feel that relaxation for another 10 before you start moving to the other muscle groups.
Awesome. So what happens, how would you suggest, I'm just going to, do a curbside consult here. You've missed the window. The child is out of control. We saw they were going to Hulk, or they went to Hulk really fast. And I think I try my best to stay calm in those moments. But as a parent, sometimes I'm like, hey, Walt, if instead of screaming right now and throwing things, you would just finish emptying the dishwasher, you would have more time to do what you want to do, which is to draw pictures or color or, whatever you're wanting to do. Why don't you just do that? I mean, I try and use my rational brain to be like, if you would just have things under control, you would have more time to color. Well, he's not available to hear that right now.
Right.
How can I, as the parent, when they're at that moment where they've already lost it and they've thrown their first dish across the room or something like that, what do you think is the approach then to initially approach the tiger before you can do anything more?
Absolutely. So I'm a big fan of the connect and then redirect, right?
Okay.
So that is just a lot of validation and naming the emotions that they're feeling. And I think it's important to remember that, we might not necessarily agree with the behaviors they're demonstrating. And we don't want to really validate them destroying rooms or cursing or having those big explosive moments, right? But we can always validate the underlying emotion, right?
Okay.
Wow, you are very frustrated right now. You are really struggling. I'm here for you. Let's try to talk through this. When you're ready, let's go. We got this together, right? And I think it's
Okay.
also important before we even approach that situation to collect ourselves first, right? It's so easy just to react as a parent and to go into it a little hot-headed as well. And we really want to be able to press that pause button, take a time out, collect ourselves, maybe use one of these tip skills on ourselves, and then engage the child and try to parent them.
That is such good advice. And I think that's one thing that parents often struggle with, guilty as charged, is I got to fix this behavior at this second. I got to make sure they understand what they did was wrong. And I got to make sure that they're punished in some way so that they realize the gravity of their actions. And we think of them like the idea that, you can't have a dog that pees on the carpet. You can't take the dog back to the carpet and get them to understand that later. And we treat children and our kids in the same way, that we got to nip this in the bud right now. We got to solve this problem. They got to know how disrespectful that was, and they got to never do that again. When what I'm hearing you say, and what we try and practice in our house, is you can, it's not okay to throw dishes, but if you've already done that, then what we're going to do is help you feel connected in what you're going through, because it must be big emotions, because usually you don't throw dishes. And then move from that place of anger, fear, sadness, hunger, whatever is the underlying cause, to a place of feeling connected. And then we can circle back and say, hey, remember earlier when you got upset and you threw that dish? Is that something that we do on is that okay? No. Why can't we do that? Well, we could hurt something, we could break something. We just don't throw dishes in this house, that sort of thing. But then they're at a different place. Then we don't throw dishes. You're going to your room. You're grounded. No Nintendo. Blah blah blah. All these things that make us feel really like we have control in the moment.
Exactly, exactly. And the big thing I try to remember, especially with my 1.5-year-old who has big emotions right now and doesn't
Hmm.
know how to communicate them, is that, his brain is growing and developing. And the brain really is growing and developing all the way up till like the mid 20s. So, really, I try to approach every situation as a teaching moment and an opportunity to teach him appropriate behaviors and how to express his emotions. And it's obviously easier said than done because in the moment we all get caught up, but that's always my default, right? His brain's like the size of a squirrel right now. Little exaggeration, but in the moment that helps me.
Yes, I think that is really a wise way to look at it too. And I will say that you get so many opportunities to get things right that you don't have to get it 100% right every time. And that's why you live together, is so that you have all those opportunities to practice. And it's not a once a week or once a month thing that you get to practice, like teaching them how to use their emotions and how to yourself get control over your own emotions. And I know plenty of adults that are active members of society and contribute and help and are nice people that sometimes lose their stuff too. And so I try and help parents understand that as well, that like it's okay that, that things haven't gone perfectly, because I know lots of adults that don't even have the skill set. So we're already way ahead that we're even talking about it and trying to help our 2-year-old or 3-year-old to get this skill set.
Absolutely. And we're all doing the best we can in the moment. Absolutely.
So you have a YouTube channel, you have a Instagram. That's where people can find you and learn more from you. Straight Talk, Toddlers to Teens, where you talk about all of the issues facing um, young children to school age to adolescents and teenagers on issues related to mental health, mental well-being, psychiatric issues. Um, is there anything else my listeners need to know about you, or where they can find you, or what they can expect from you?
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, like you said, everything is under Straight Talk Toddlers to Teens. The easiest way to find the links to everything would be my website, which is www.straighttalkt2t.com. So that's T, the number 2, T.com. That has all the links to all of my social media platforms, the YouTube channel, my private Facebook group. And like you said, we're just kind of tackling parenting struggles, those day-to-day struggles, whether it's, child development, mental health diagnoses, just everything and anything.
I love it. And it's so needed. And at this moment, when everybody's at home together and doing their, best to keep everything going with remote learning, distance learning, in-person learning with masks and quarantining and isolation and everything, now is the perfect time for people to practice slowly but surely improving those parenting skills, because you just can't get away from those kids right now. So you might as well enjoy it a little bit more. So thank you so much, Dr. Aly Wood. This has been a pleasure, and I am going to subscribe to your YouTube channel, follow you on Instagram, so that I can get all the good content and share that out on my own platform. And I hope that my listeners and audience will do the same.
Thank you so much for this opportunity. It was wonderful talking with you.